You know that feeling? It's 2 a.m. again. Your partner is sound asleep right next to you, and you're just staring at the ceiling, endlessly running that exact same calculation you've been running for weeks, maybe even months. Should I break up? Man, it's agonizing. But look, if you're struggling with this right now, let me validate something for you right out of the gate. The sheer difficulty of this calculation, it simply means you are taking it seriously. And that is exactly why the source material we're looking at in today's explainer is just so incredibly helpful. Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to the explainer. Now, if you clicked on this looking for some generic run-of-the-mill internet checklist to tell you whether to stay or go, well, you won't find it here. Instead, we're going to walk through a really fascinating framework by licensed marriage and family therapist Figs O'Sullivan. We're going to explore a biological framework designed to help get you completely unstuck. So here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover 1, the biology of indecision, 2, the window of tolerance, 3, decoding your doubts, 4, the 7 critical questions, 5, attachment bias, and finally 6, making the choice. Basically, we're going to move step by step, starting with the underlying biological mechanisms that are actually paralyzing you straight through to a clear, actionable resolution. All right, section 1, the biology of indecision, why your brain is working against you. Let's just relieve some of that guilt right away, okay? Your inability to decide is absolutely not a character flaw. It's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a deeply ingrained mammalian biological response. We are literally wired for connection. So when your attachment system perceives a massive threat, like losing your primary bond, your biology essentially works against your ability to think clearly. When I first read about this next part, it honestly blew my mind because it all comes down to milliseconds versus seconds. See, when your brain detects the threat of a breakup, your fast-acting amygdala spikes into full-blown panic mode in mere milliseconds, but your prefrontal cortex, you know, the logical, rational part of your brain that you actually need to make a huge decision like this, that takes roughly 6 seconds to even come online. So in that tiny gap, your body has basically already sounded the alarm, packed its bags, and called a cab. There's this incredibly powerful metaphor from the source text that I found so profoundly validating. Imagine trying to do your taxes during an earthquake. Think about that. The earthquake is your attachment panic just firing off all cylinders. The taxes, well, that's your rational attempt to figure out what to do. You aren't bad at doing your taxes. The ground is just shaking way too hard to even hold a pencil. Which brings us to section 2, the window of tolerance, mapping your emotional state. This brilliantly illustrates exactly why our minds constantly flip-flop on the stay or go decision. It introduces a clinical concept called the window of tolerance, which maps out our emotional state on a scale from 0 to 15. Let's walk through these 3 zones. Down at 0 to 5, you're in the basement. You're completely shut down, exhausted, just looking to escape. Up at 10 to 15, you're in the penthouse, totally flooded with rage, panic, or fear. The absolutely crucial takeaway here, and honestly, this changed how I view relationship arguments entirely, is that any breakup decision made in the basement or the penthouse is just your nervous system reacting. It is not a real choice. The only place you can make a real lasting decision is inside the window from 5 to 10, where things might be really difficult, but you are present, grounded, and actually rational. Moving right along to section 3, decoding your doubts, informational versus distortion. So let's go ahead and toss out those generic red flag checklists you see all over the internet. Why? Because depending on your biological state, you're going to perceive those red flags completely differently. Instead, let's contrast 2 entirely different types of relationship doubts that we all experience. There is a really fascinating division here. Informational doubts are quiet. They whisper to you on a random Tuesday afternoon when everything is totally fine, signaling genuine structural unmet needs in your relationship. Distortion doubts, on the other hand, are incredibly loud. They literally scream at you during a fight, demanding immediate action. And they're based almost entirely on anxiety, dysregulation, or, suddenly comparing your actual relationship to someone else's perfectly curated highlight reel. All right, section 4, the 7 critical questions. Only ask these inside the window. Now that we know how to identify the biological noise, it's time to actually evaluate the relationship. But remember, you must be regulated. Go grab a coffee, sit somewhere quiet, make absolutely sure you are firmly inside that window of tolerance, and use these specific questions to bypass your panic. Question 1, do I feel safe or just comfortable? I found this distinction so critical because we mix them up all the time. Comfort is just familiarity. I mean, you can be perfectly comfortable with someone who completely dismisses your feelings simply because you're used to that dynamic. Safety is a whole different ballgame. Safety means you actually have the ability to be vulnerable and imperfect without being punished for it. Question 2 is a pretty hard mirror for any of us to look into. Am I trying to fix a relationship problem or a me problem? Look, if you have unresolved trauma, clinical anxiety, or deeply ingrained avoidant patterns, those things are going to follow you right into the next relationship within 12 to 18 months. Anyway, if it's a me problem at its core, breaking up is really only going to provide a very temporary illusion of relief. Let's quickly run through these next vital checkpoints. First off, hinting isn't communicating. You actually have to state your needs clearly and directly before you can judge if they're being met. Second, we are remarkably blind to our own relationships. So ask yourself, what objective advice would I give my absolute best friend if they were in my exact shoes? Third, staying out of a fear of being alone. That's just avoidance in disguise. And finally, if you guys tried therapy, did you actually do the difficult homework or did you just show up for an hour a week to complain? And then we get to the ultimate clarifying question. If nothing about this relationship changed in the next 2 years, could I live with that? Think about that one for a second. This cuts right through all the noise because it focuses purely on acceptance. Not, could it get better if they magically change, but can I accept this exactly as it is right now, rather than burning all your energy waiting for some perfect future that simply doesn't exist? Section 5, attachment bias, how your wiring warps the data. Let's take a look at how all of this builds together. We absolutely have to understand how our personal attachment styles don't just change our everyday behavior. They actually completely warp the raw data we use to evaluate our partners. So the crucial point here is that everyone has a bias. If you lean anxious, your nervous system is heavily tuned for threat detection. It pushes you toward those penthouse panic decisions where you constantly overestimate the bad stuff. But if you lean avoidant, you might feel totally suffocated by closeness and instinctively pulled toward independence, risking a basement escape decision just to find some relief. Accounting for your specific nervous system wiring is absolutely essential if you want to see a relationship clearly instead of through a highly distorted lens. And finally, section 6, making the choice. How to finally decide. Okay, you've mapped your state, you've decoded your doubts, and you've accounted for your inherent bias. Now, it is time to step out of the analysis phase and into the concrete, actionable steps for actually concluding this agonizing deliberation. First things first, let me reassure you, based on what the experts say, there is no objectively perfect choice. The right answer is a complete myth. Honestly, there is only a decision that you can live with, provided you make it with your full rational brain online, completely centered right there inside that window of tolerance. So ask yourself this: have you been ruminating for over 6 months? See, deliberation has a trajectory. It explores options and naturally moves toward clarity, but rumination, that's just an endless, exhausting loop of avoidance. Living in perpetual ambivalence is its own severe form of suffering, and eventually, just for your own sanity, you have to pick a path. Now, if you feel a rash decision bubbling up during a moment of really high emotion, use this stop the tape protocol. Step 1, speak up and loudly acknowledge to your partner that your biology has temporarily hijacked your decision making. Step 2, take 5 minutes away to just breathe and reset. Step 3, wait. You're doing this just so your prefrontal cortex, that logical cognitive toolkit we talked about earlier, can finally get back online. Once you do make that rational decision, there are exact rules for the aftermath. If you decide to stay, actively commit to it. Seriously, stop browsing dating apps just to see. If you decide to leave, understand that a delayed hit of intense grief around week 3 or 4 is completely normal biologically. It does not mean you made the wrong choice. Above all, whatever you do, do not keep one foot in and one foot out. Oh, and avoid the let's stay friends trap. It just prevents true healing. Make a clean break rather than slapping a Band-Aid on a frayed connection. I really love this quote because it perfectly captures the core thesis of the framework we've explored today. I don't care what you decide, I care how you decide. Seriously, just by engaging with this explainer, stepping back and trying to get your rational mind to lead rather than letting your reactive impulses drive the car, you are already taking a massive, incredibly positive step forward. We're going to leave you with this final provocative thought. It is so remarkably easy to fall into the sunk cost fallacy, right? Worrying about all the years you've already invested in a relationship. But those past years, they aren't a reason to spend more time if it's just not right. The only question that truly matters right now is, what do you want the next 5 years to look like? The choice is entirely yours to make with absolute clarity. If you want to work on this for real, try Figlet, my AI relationship coaching app. You can start for free, no credit card needed at figlet.empathy.com.